What does it mean to feel whole? What does it mean to feel safe? What does it mean to reconnect with our inner child? What is care, and how can care be reimagined? How can wholeness, safety, and care be explored through oil painting? For me, art has always been a necessary form of communication, and in this project, I painted 3 24-inch by 30-inch oil paintings to really capture the essence of these questions. I'd like to talk a little bit about my creative inspirations. In my writing and readings, I'm personally more drawn to fantastical, mythical forms of art to unearth meaning or simply seek comfort and understanding about something that's difficult to grasp in reality. Anyone who knows me knows that I love video games, and one of those is the Final Fantasy series, which is said to be one of the most popular role-playing games in history. Here I have a couple of artworks from Final Fantasy affiliated artists Tetsuya Nomura, Yosuke Naora, and Yoshitaka Amano. In these games and others I've played, there's character development, music, setting, and plot that all work together to tell a story. And these have been familiar to me since I was a little girl, so revisiting them is one way I reconnect to my inner child. A thought that eventually prompted me to wonder how others reconnect to their inner child. And I'll explain how this was relevant to my project's process later on. Overall, these games and works of art inspired me to approach this whole project similarly by planning out specific milestones and the disciplinary intersections of human biology, feminism, and painting that together tell the story of my final 3 paintings. So before any sketches or painting occurred, my research started with creating a collection of readings to learn more about feminism and women's narratives. I also knew that I wanted to share the knowledge I learned from these works and the connections I was making to human biology and art with other women in my life. So I reached out to a few and designed interview questions that invited participants to share their experiences with health, their bodies, community, and how they reconnect with their younger self. A few of the questions that I asked include, what moves you? What is at your core? Tell me about a time when you felt whole and or safe. What did that feel like? Who or what surrounded you? What has influenced your perceptions of beauty throughout your life? How do you define beauty? How do you take care of your whole self? These conversations took place over Zoom and were kept private. They were very cathartic conversations for me, and before I conducted the conversations, I had an idea of how I wanted to draw inspiration from them, but I realized that I just wanted to vividly depict the emotional intensity of these conversations in 3 oil paintings, and that was a beautiful thought process in itself because the experiences that were shared were wholeness and reimagined care. And the decision to make 3 paintings happened fairly recently because I was thinking about all the different ways I wanted to explore these questions and ideas so that the viewer could ultimately resonate with the imagery in their own way. So this project was first inspired by a project on motherhood I worked on my freshman through sophomore year. And I truly see it as the foundation of this project. It almost feels like a continuation of the learning I did about embodied knowledge 3 years ago. It really is, this current project really is a love letter to this first original project. That was also my first time working with oil painting. I recently read Amy Tan's essay, Mother Tongue, and it really resonated with me, and it took me back to the emotions I felt working on that first initial project about motherhood. And in it, she just reflects on her relationship with her mother and the various ways that they communicate with each other through language. A quote from her essay reads, Her language, as I hear it, is vivid, direct, full of observation and imagery. That was the language that helped shape the way I saw things, expressed things, made sense of the world. For 4 years, I have studied and looked inward at the body. I am not only a human biology major, learning about child and maternal health from multiple angles, but I'm also on the pre-med track, so clinical research experiences and classes such as biochemistry and physiology have been at the core of my academic career. And in these classes, I was provided with in-depth explanations about biological processes that occur in our bodies all the time in order to survive. And in this project, I'm not only doing that, but also looking beyond and what surrounds the body, and starting conversations about what is nourishing for the body. So like I mentioned, the core of this project is an intersection of human biology, feminism, and painting, which really allowed me to speak to medicine with much more intimacy. Usually, the intersection that's made between painting or art and medicine is anatomical illustrations. And in this project, I'm taking a huge step back from that and really drawing on my influences of video game art and these elements to really make the paintings appear more celestial and mythical rather than sticking with traditional portraiture, which is what I'm used to. The reading and reflection phase of my project was especially important for me to devote time learning about feminism, women's health, and larger community health. I'd like to offer a definition of feminism by bell hooks. Simply put, feminism is a movement to end sexism, sexist exploitation, and oppression. It was my hope at the time that it would become a common definition everyone would use. I like this definition because it did not imply that men were the enemy. By naming sexism as the problem, it went directly to the heart of the matter. The oppression that bell hooks speaks to in this definition relates to the sexist, racist, and capitalist structures that create barriers to care that predominantly impact low-income women and women of color. A framework that directly addresses these barriers is the reproductive justice framework, which was pioneered by a group of Black women in 1994. The history of this term and the mission of the reproductive justice organization Sister Song is explored in Zakia Luna's 2009 essay, From Rights to Justice. A mission statement by Sister Song included in Luna's essay reads, "Reproductive justice stresses both individuality and group rights. We all have the same human rights, but may need different things to achieve them based on our intersectional location in our life. Our race, class, gender, sexual orientation, and immigration status. The ability of a woman to determine her reproductive destiny is directly tied to conditions in her community." A selection of my readings also addressed care, wholeness, and love through poetry or personal narrative, and these were also central in inspiring the direction of my paintings. An example includes Elizabeth Acevedo's The Poet X, which is a fictional poetry collection in which the main character, Xiomara, discovers her love for poetry as a way to explore her relationship with her family, religion, and first love. One poem that stood out to me is titled Holding a Poem in the Body, and here I have an excerpt of the first half of the poem. Tonight after my shower, instead of staring at the parts of myself I want to puzzle piece into something else, I watch my mouth memorize one of my poems. Even though I don't plan on letting anyone hear it, I think about that poetry video from class. I let the words shape themselves hard on my tongue. I let my hands pretend to be punctuation marks that slash and point and press in on each other. I let my body finally take up all the space it wants. This was such a beautiful story to read for the first time, and it made me think about how fictional characters can be powerful entry points into a story. And even after finishing the story, these characters never leave you. Another book I really enjoyed is Bell Hooks' All About Love, And in this reading, Bell Hooks describes love as an act, a choice one makes towards themselves, toward their communities, and so forth. And every time I go back to this book, I learn something new and come to a new realization about how I can give more love to myself. And it expands far beyond romantic love that is so ideally portrayed. And in my project, I also see the conversations I conducted as an act of love and also as moments when care is being reimagined. And I was really excited to share quotes and ideas from this book with the individuals I spoke with in the interviews. I see this whole collection of readings as honest, raw testimonies, moments when these women writers exercised agency and created openings for their narratives and ideas to be shared in their own words. Both the readings and the conversations allowed me to depict the emotional intensity through painting. And painting is what really allowed me to pick a very dynamic color palette to bring detail to flowers and fruits for the purpose of depicting nourishment, while also allowing the viewer to interpret it in their own way. I honestly see this project continuing after my senior year and graduation, and I'd like to especially thank the Honors in the Arts cohort, family, and friends who were part of this project all year. Thank you.